All right, Rabosai, good Erev Shabbos. Let us begin. So, what I want to do tonight, we started. We didn't have shir, right? We didn't have shir 2 weeks, right? So 3 weeks ago, we started a beautiful piece by Rabbi Nachman in Likutei Halachos. So tonight, I would like to go ahead and continue on that piece a little bit. We're not going to finish it because it's a very long piece, but in Meretz Hashem we could begin to go ahead and at least move forward in it. I also want to thank Rabbi Yehuda Buchwalter for dedicating this shir tonight as a zechus for Refuah Shalema, for Bracha Adina Chana Bas Mindel Devora. We hope that on the merit of our Talmud Torah, she together with Kol Cholei Yisrael will have a complete and enduring refuah. Shukran for the sponsorship. All right, so just a little bit of a chazar, a little bit of a review. So if you remember again, the Rebbe introduced us to this. So first of all, for those of you who are joining us now for the first time for this year, so we're starting from Rabbi Nachman's Likutei Halachos. Likutei Halachos is a very unique sefer, because what the Rebbe did is he went through Seder HaShulchan Aruch, takes a halacha and Shulchan Aruch, and gives us the panemius, gives us the deeper meaning, a deeper understanding in this particular halacha. So the Rebbe over here, we'll come back to the halacha in just a little bit, so we don't have to review that piece, but I want to review the pieces. The Rebbe said like this, an incredible kind of life-altering chiddush, where the Rebbe said the concept of dan l'kol adam l'kaf sechus, being dan l'kaf sechus. So until we saw the Rebbe, we translated that concept as giving people the benefit of the doubt. Rabbi Nachman changed that definition. He said, no, being dan l'kaf sechus means being able to see the good even in the midst of all the negativity. So remember again, last year we spoke about the right? We'll say, what's the paradigmatic example of being down the kaf schos? The paradigmatic example? What would you say? Paradigmatic example of being down the kaf schos.
Going into McDonald's.
Right, I see Ruben walking into McDonald's. Right, so again, I could say, he's going to buy a cheeseburger, or I could be down the kaf schos, give him the benefit of the doubt, and say, no, he's going to buy a cup of coffee, he's going to buy a soda, he's going to use the restroom. So we often translate the word being, or the phrase being down the kaf schos, as when you see someone doing something, and it could be interpreted either as a maisa avera or not a maisa avera, judge them favorably and assume that they're not committing an avera. The problem with that definition is what? Sometimes you see people doing something and what? There's no possible good teretz to it, right? In other words, that, the same case, Reuven walks into McDonald's and what happens? I see him eating a cheeseburger. So I'm going to say, no, it's not their cheeseburger, it's his burger, it's an impossible burger. Yeah, it's quite impossible, right? It's impossible that it's not treif, right? In other words, that meaning, so what do you do in those circumstances where, again, clearly someone is doing something that is absolutely wrong? So the Rebbe says that's why being dan l'kaf sechus actually means something deeper. He says what it means is, when you see someone doing something bad, objectively bad, don't just judge them based on the negative actions they have engaged in, but rather what? Look at the whole person. And say, you're right, maybe they're going ahead and doing something bad, but they also do a lot of good. Being dan l'kaf sechus means in the moment you see someone doing something terrible, find something good inside of them as well. Go ahead and create a balanced perception. Now, interesting enough, the Rebbe said, the din of being down the kaf schus, we often think of that concept as a concept that applies to other people. But the Rebbe says the truth is, the essence of being down the kaf schus really begins where? Begins with ourselves. Begins with ourselves. How do we look at ourselves? Do we look at ourselves as people who have committed an incredible amount of averos and maybe a sprinkling of mitzvos? But often the Rebbe says, and this is very reflective of Rabbi Nachman's own struggle with himself, that how do I view myself? And the Rebbe says too often we view ourselves as sinners. We view ourselves as people who have done terrible things, and we view ourselves only through the prism of our failures and not through the prism of our successes. So the Rebbe says, being dan l'kaf sechus means when I look in the mirror, I have to see the good that is inside of me. I can't ignore the negativity. I can't ignore the bad, but I also have to see the good that is inside of you. So, I was thinking about this a little bit, that, one of my favorite ideas in Chumash, I must have said it like a million times over the years. The pasuk says, Basar basoda treifa lo sochilun. Right? If you go ahead and you find a treifa, right? So a treifa is an animal killed by another animal. So I find the treifa in the field. right? It's treifa, you can't eat it. La kelev tashlichun also. You have to give it to the dog. So the Das Ekim Balatosas, the Tosafis, in their commentary on Torah say like this. If you look at the taich of the pasuk says La Kelev. Now La Kelev translates as how? How do you translate La Kelev? To the dog. It should have said what? Likelev. Likelev means what? To a dog. Why La Kelev? Why to the dog? So that Zok the Das Ekim, something so amazing. Who's the dog the Torah is referring to? It's referring to the sheepdog. Who's the sheepdog? The sheepdog is in charge of the flock. Chevra, when do you have a treifa? Think about this. You're a shepherd. Think about that, right? I'm a shepherd. I have a flock. If I have a flock, who's in charge of guarding the flock? The sheepdog. If there's a treifa, it means who didn't do their job? Who didn't do their job? The sheepdog. So says the Torah Kedosha. If there's a treifa, what should you do? Who should you give the treifa to? Who should you give the carcass to? Give it to the sheepdog. Give it to the sheepdog. Crazy. The sheepdog didn't do his job. It's true. He didn't do his job this time. But what about all the other times he did do his job? Right? What about all the other times that he fended off predatory animals to protect the flock? What about all the other times where he was a faithful, trusted companion to do, and he did what he was supposed to in the moment he was supposed to? So the Das Ekim says, in the moment that he fails, remember all of the times that he came through. Because you see, human nature is such. What do they say? What's the sprach in the Welt? You're only as good as your last deal, right? Is that what they say? In Rabbanos that doesn't apply, but I'm saying it in the world, right? You're only as good as your last deal. See, the way that relationships work is we often look at people through the prism of the last thing they did. So you did something great, you're a great person. You did something terrible, you're a terrible person. So the Torah says that's a terrible way to approach relationships. At the end of the day, you have to have a balanced perception. So the sheepdog failed. He failed. What about all the other times he didn't fail? So in the moment of failure, instead of judging him as a failure, give him a good dinner. Give him the good dinner. Give him the treifa. And ultimately say, I know you failed. But at the end of the day, I know you failed, but at the end of the day, I'm remembering now all of the times that you really came through for me. Rabbi Nachman is saying it's true for how we look at ourselves as well. Then when we look at ourselves, what do we see? Do we just see our failures? Or do we see the totality of the personality? Yeah, I failed a lot. I've failed a lot in life. But I've also done a lot of great things. I've also accomplished a lot. And am I able to see my own personalistic good even in the midst of failure? And the Rebbe says, you have to start with that yourself. I have to begin to see the positive in me, the tov shebi od ma'at ve'in Russia, like we learned in last week and last year, od ma'at ve'in Russia is always a little bit that's still good. Find something good inside of yourself. Once I could find something good inside of me, despite the fact that there is a sea of imperfection and a sea of fault, once I could do that inside of me, I can do that for other people also. And I can begin to see the good in other people. So being dan lekaf sechus means that even when I see you do something wrong, I don't categorize you as a sinner. I don't categorize you as a bad person. Because I look at you in your totality, and there's plenty of good in there also. And remember again, the Rebbe said so beautifully, once you can be dan lekaf sechus on yourself, that's when you have the power to sing. Right, the power of Nagina. And once you could go ahead and be dan lekaf sechus for other people, then you have the ability to what? To be a shliach tzibur. Right, then you could be a chazan. So we'll say, so let's pick up, right, that was all chazara. Let's pick up a little bit. So we're picking up, we're going to skip around a little bit tonight. Let's pick up Emir Hashem on page Vav in your handout. I put most of the Maimer on here, but let's take a look at page Vav. We're going to look in the middle section, and that's called Likutei Halachos HaMavur. This is, as I mentioned last year, I'm very excited because this is a new edition of Likutei Halachos. They have this beautiful Perushim alongside. So we're looking in the middle section over here, this section right over here, where you see a little asterisk over there, page Vav. So the Rebbe says as follows. He says, it begins on page Hey. One page back, where you see that bays in the brackets. You see what I'm talking about? Middle section, bays in the brackets. V'zeh, ha'estaklus halatov, hu bechinas hisorus hashena. The ability to look at the good that is inside of you and not to totally categorize yourself as bad, despite many faults and misdeeds, that's called an awakening from sleep. That's called an awakening from sleep. Because the Rebbe says, when a person feels that he is far from the Ribono Shalom, as a result of that, he loses his will to live. He loses his chiyus. He loses his energy, and he falls into a state of slumber. What the Rebbe is going to develop over here is as follows. There are two states of life, right? There's Shena, there's sleep, and there's Hisorus, there's awakening. Shena is the state, the spiritual state that I am in, when all I see is my own negativity. All I see is my darkness. I don't see anything good. I don't see anything positive. That state of only seeing your faults and your negativity, that's called sleep. That's called Shena. But when a person is able to see the good inside of themselves, and I will say, I want to be clear, when the Rebbe seeks us seeing the good, does it mean ignoring your shortcomings, your faults, and your failures? Of course not. But what it means is contextualizing them and recognizing that those faults, those failures, that's not my totality. There's good inside of me also. The ability, when I'm able to see my good, that's his orus. That's awakening. That's an awakened state. So the Rebbe says, because ultimately when a person can't see the good inside of him, and all he sees is the negativity, that's like sleep. And sleep, we know, is like death. As the Rebbe says, page Vav, Kimuva, quotes Gemara Maseches Brachos, Shashena hi echad mishishim b'miso. Sleep is 1/60th of death. Ulehefach, kishemiskaber umechapes umevakesh umotzi v'atzma izin akuda tova dayin. Therefore, when a person looks and finds something positive inside of themselves, umechaye umisamech as atzmo bazeh, and a person literally again is misamech, he makes himself rejoice. He finds joy in the fact that there's good inside of me, despite all of my shortcomings. Ma'or es atzmo la'avodas Hashem yisbarach al yedei zeh. A person awakens himself. See, the whole chap over here is, if you find good inside of yourself, despite all of the failures, the shortcomings, and the misdeeds, the Rebbe says, I awaken myself. Because I will say, think about this in just a moment. We spoke about this in the last year. If a person feels like a nothing, what is the statistical probability that they're going to accomplish anything? Low. Right, hovering right around zero. Right? Because think about it, if I'm a nothing, so then what am I building on? But if I find good inside of myself, despite the fact that there are many, many imperfections and faults and failures, but there is some good, that good gives me the chizik to build. The Rebbe says the act of finding good inside of yourself, that's the awakening from slumber. When I'm in a state where all I see is the negativity inside of me, that's sleep. That's slumber. So the Rebbe goes on, V'zeh hargoshas harichu ki b'chinas masha amar David HaMelech Hashem mara butzar asher b'osei. We're going to skip a little bit. Skip to page Zayin. Again, in the middle section, right by the asterisk there. Aval be'emes ha'adam asr lo liya'ish ba'atzmo. We'll say this is, if Rabbi Nachman had a couple of major mantras that drove his entire philosophy of life. And one of his most important mantras was, Ein shum yeyush ba'olam klal. As the Rebbe writes in Likutei Moharan. There is no such thing as yeyush. You can't give up. And in fact, the Rebbe felt in general that the worst aveira we commit, it's not chil Shabbos or lashon hara or arayos. The worst aveira a person could commit is yeyush, because the moment you give up in life is the moment we're done. Think about it just a moment. You could commit any aveira. Can you rebound from any aveira? Can you rebound? Yes, you can read now. Again, it doesn't mean that you can rebound without collateral damage. Sometimes there are averas that create collateral damage. You can't undo the collateral damage. But lamaisa, like the Gemara Maseches Brachos says, mu'uvas lo yuchal liskon. That sometimes something that's crooked cannot be made straight. There are times in life where we make mistakes, and I cannot fix the mistake. In other words, I can't undo the damage. The damage is done. But can I rebound? Sure. The damage might always be there, but that doesn't mean I can't rebound and start again in a different way. So the Rebbe said, look, these words are so profound. Aval be'emes, the true emes in life, says Rabbi Nachman, is Aser lo liyaish atzmo v'lipo l'shena afa pishu moli chatom pegoyim. You can't give up on yourself. You can't give up on yourself, and you can't fall asleep. Remember again, in Rabbi Nachman's world, what does falling asleep represent? Falling asleep means giving up on yourself. Giving up on yourself. Falling asleep is what happens is when a person looks in a mirror, and all they see is the negativity. All I see are my averas. All I see are my mistakes. And I say to myself, what is the point? So what's the point? This is who I am. I can't be anything different than a sinner. What happens when a person does that? They go to sleep. Spiritual slumber. I go to sleep. I hibernate. The Rebbe says, you can't give up on yourself. I can't give up on myself. And I can't go to sleep even if I am filled with Averis. And a person has to wake up from their slumber. Find something good inside of yourself. Anything, even if the good is imperfect, even if the good is highly flawed, find some good inside of yourself and shake yourself out of the slumber. So it goes on, he says, skip a little bit, let's go on. He said, V'zeh hemshech hamizmar, hakitosi ki Hashem yismechini, hakitosi hainu, shani miskaber u'misor mishenasi, Ki ein ani miyaish atzmi adayin. So the Rebbe says, Hakitos, you have to wake myself up. I'm not going to fall asleep. I'm not going to give up on myself. Why? Ki Hashem yismecheni. Hainu shenekudas elokus shebesochi somech asasi. Now, here Rabbi Nachman says something amazing. Ki anakuda tova sha'ada motze ba'atzmo ze bechinas gilui elokus keviyachol. See, Rabbi say, listen to this. Says Rabbi Nachman, when I go through this exercise and I find something positive inside of myself, that little ray of positivity, no matter how small it may be, is a manifestation of the divine inside of me. When I find something positive, that's the Ribono Shel Olam. That's HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So when I find something positive inside of me, I am finding a piece of the Ribono Shel Olam in myself. He says, that's the pshat in the pasuk. Hakitzosi, I'm able to wake myself up. Ki Hashem yismecheni. For Hashem, so what does it mean Hashem supports me? That when I find something good inside of myself, what I'm really finding is a little piece of the Ribono Shel Olam in me. And if there's a little piece of the Ribono Shel Olam in me, then that gives me hope that I can truly rehabilitate myself. Ki kalatov, hainu kol davar shu tov be'emes, ubefrat kidushas haTorah v'hamitzvos humeito yisparach ki oraisa v'yisrael v'kutshabrichu chadhu. Nimtza, left-hand paragraph, kishiyesh b'yisrael ezen nekuda tova. When a Jew finds some good inside of himself, Tahainu ezo mitzvah o davar tov, ze'atov hu achdus gomer imo yisparach. But say, hear this? It's incredible. When I find some good inside of myself, what am I finding? I'm finding a little piece of the Ribono Shel Olam in me. So isn't this incredible? So the Rebbe says, sometimes I look at myself and I say, I'm so flawed. I'm so flawed. And whether we realize it or not, we give up on ourselves. And we kind of we write ourselves off. People think the big problem is other people writing me off. Other people write me off all the time. That's not the issue, right? The greater challenge is when I write myself off. And says, it's my sin b'chol yom. How do you avoid writing yourself off? Especially if you're like me and you've made so many dramatic life mistakes. So how do you not write yourself off? So the Rebbe says, find something good. Shkoyach, I find something good. Very nice. I found one good thing in the midst of a sea of misdeeds and faults. Says the Rebbe, maybe. But that one good thing, that's HaKadosh Baruch Hu inside of me. That one mitzvah, that one chesed, that one piece of Torah, that represents that the Ribono Shel Olam B'chvodo U'Ba'atzmo lives inside of me. And if HaKadosh Baruch Hu is still living inside of me, despite all of my failures and missteps, then that shows that I have the ability to reawaken. That shows that I have the ability to rehabilitate, that I have the ability to truly make something of myself. He goes on, he says, skip a little bit, and also we're going to skip actually a lot, and we're going to go to turn to page Tes Zayin. So again, not that what we're skipping is unimportant; it's incredibly important. But what the Rebbe is doing is he's developed a thesis. And again, what he does in these other pages is he develops it and reinforces it. He gives a mashal with Moshe Rabbeinu, a mashal with the Mishkan, but I want to tie it back. The Rebbe say, remember again, how did we start this? What was the first halacha that the Rebbe quoted? Halacha Aleph in Shulchan Aruch. What did Shulchan Aruch say? Yiskaber kari lamot baboker la'avodas boro. We'll say, what's the first halacha? You have to get up, you have to be strong like a lion. Lamo baboker, to get up in the morning to serve your Creator. Shiehu ma'orar shachar. I have to literally again awaken the dawn. That's the mechaber. And then the Ramah said, Shivis Hashem l'negdi samid zek pagodol batorah. I have placed Hashem before me always. That is an important column Torah. Says the Rebbe, watch this, Rebbe say. This is incredible. I'm on page Tes Zayin now. Again, in the middle section, right over here by the asterisk, the Rebbe says as follows. He says, says the Rebbe, this idea that I just expounded, this idea of, remember again, just follow the progression. All of this, again, we start with Dan L'Kaf Schus, a new definition of Dan L'Kaf Schus. We now understand, also the Rebbe extends that to mean that there are two states in life, Shena and his Orerus, sleeping and an awake state. Sleep is essentially when I give up on myself, all I see is the negativity. The awakened state is when I'm fully conscious of my shortcomings, but I also see the good that is inside of me. Furthermore, when I find that good, it's not just the pshat that I did something nice. The good inside of me is the Ribono Shel Olam himself. Because remember, again, he quoted the Zohar, Kuchabrichu Yisrael Torah Chadhi. Am Yisrael HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Torah, it's all one entity. So when I find something good, I find the mitzvah, I find the chesed, I find Torah inside of me. What I'm finding is the Ribono Shel Olam inside of me. And my goal is, find that good, find that Kadosh Baruch Hu in me, shake off the slumber, resist the temptation to quote-unquote fall asleep, and remain awake. Says the Rebbe, this is the first halacha in Shulchan Aruch. Watch this. V'zemerumaz b'divrei Shulchan Aruch. What does the Shulchan Aruch say? Yiskaber ka'ari la'amod baboker la'avodas boro. Be strong like a lion. Be strong like a lion to get up in the morning to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So says the Rebbe, what exactly is the halacha over here, boss? Right? What is the mandate? Is that now again? Bei Pasha Pshat is that the Shulchan Aruch is telling me when you get up in the morning, don't kind of like slink out of bed, fall out of bed. Get up with a gusto, right? Remember we spoke about this in the first year that maybe on the Pashat level is get up with a purpose, right? The lion knows he has a purpose. He's the king of the jungle. He knows what his tafkid is. He knows what his role is. So when he gets up, right, he knows that he has a tachlis. When you get up, know you have a tachlis. But the Rebbe says, sing something deeper. Sha'adam tzarich lehisgaber lus or mishenaso or nifilaso. The Rebbe says the Shulchan Aruch isn't only teaching you about how to physically awaken in the morning, but the Shulchan Aruch is teaching us how to spiritually awaken in the morning. Because the Rebbe says sometimes I open my eyes in the morning and you know what I say to myself? I'm too tired to articulate, but you know what I say? What's the point? What's the point? How many times have I started the day saying, today's going to be different, right? Today's going to be, today's the day, right? Today's the day. The Satmar of Secher Sativ Chadash Racha said, the pasuk says, "Me'acharis hashana ad sof shana." So the Rebbe says, the pasuk is talking about HaKadosh Baruch who watches over Eretz Yisrael. And so everything that's going to happen, right? From the beginning of the year, it's Me'reishis Hashana, sorry. Me'reishis Hashana ad acharis Shana. So the way it literally translates is from the beginning of the year until the end of year. So Satmar Rav says something amazing. He says, because you know how life works? Mereshis Hashana. What do I say at Rosh Hashanah? What do I say at Rosh Hashanah? We all say the same thing. What do we say? This is the year. This is like my breakout year. This is it. This is going to be the year where I'm going to do everything. And then what happens? I come to the year, and then end of the year, what? Sof Shana. Right? The year begins with the Heya Yediyah, the definitive article. Right? The definitive article. This is the year. And then by the time I get to the end of it, it's just another year. So says Rabbi Nachman something so profound. The Rebbe says, sometimes I open my eyes in the morning and I say to myself, what's the point? What's the point? How many times am I going to tell myself, today's the day? I've said it for years. I said today's the day. And yet, often, by the time the day is over, I find myself right back where I started. So maybe I should just stay in bed. Because, you know what the good part about staying in bed? At least you know, if you stay in bed, what's going to happen? What's going to happen?
It's predictable.
It's predictable, right? I'll be rested. So I might as well be frustrated and rested, right? And not be frustrated and tired, right? So what's the point? What's the point of doing the same thing? So the Rebbe says, that's the Shulchan Aruch is saying, Yisgaber ka'ari la'amod baboker la'avodas boro. The Torah is not just simply talking to us about how we get up in a physiological sense, but the Torah Kedosh is teaching us what we have to do to awaken our neshama. That there's a Yitzhahara when I wake up in the morning to say, come on, you're not going to do anything differently. It's going to be the same thing. You know what you do. You know your faults. You've been trying to correct them for years. You haven't been able to get any real traction on anything. So ultimately, again, therefore the Shulchan Aruch, and therefore we'll say, it's tempting just to sleep. And remember again, in Rabbi Nachman's model, what does sleep represent? Sleep just represents when I define myself by my negative traits and don't see anything positive. The first halacha in Shulchan Aruch is when you open your eyes, find the good inside of yourself. Before I say moda'ani, because the truth is, most of us need a reason to get out of bed in the morning. I need a reason. So why should I get out of bed in the morning? Yiskaber kari, wake yourself up by finding the good that is inside of you. How do you do it? Va'ayidei ma yisorer. So how do I awaken myself? Ayidei shehu ma'ora hashachar. So I'll say, so now this is an interesting lashon. Shulchan Aruch says, I have to awaken the dawn. How do you awaken the dawn? Hainu kniska la'el, she'orer hanakudos tovos, she'im bechinas shachar. Bechinas mashakasu va'ira shachar. Va'ayidei zeh yisorer mishinoso nefilaso. So both say, lashon ma'ora shachar, Rabbi Nachman says, means find the good inside of yourself. When I wake up in the morning, the first thing I have to do to get myself going is remind myself that I am good. And not just remind myself that I am good, but identify what's good. What's good about me? What's good about me? Find something good inside of yourself and remind yourself. Make yourself cognizant of that first thing in the morning. That's how you get up. Now watch this. V'zeh bechinas la'amod baboker. Ki ikar hisorus me'ashen kniska la'el hu al yidei bechinas boker d'Avram hanikra isha chesed. Okay, we didn't do that part. So the Rebbe says, the first thing when I open my eyes up in the morning is I have to be ma'or yiskaber kari. You have to be strong. La'amo baboker. To wake up in the morning. But how do you get yourself going? So how do you get yourself going? She'ehu ma'orer hashachar. How do I do that? Ultimately, again, by me finding the light. How do I find the light? Bidan l'kaf sechos, myself. Right? Bidan myself l'kaf sechos. Don't judge myself by the shortcomings and negativities, but rather find something good. He goes on, he says, V'zeh shenismach lahalocha shel hashkamas haboker hagah, shetzarach l'kaim. So we'll say, so that says Rabbi Nachman, is the mechaber. We'll say, isn't this incredible? So yiskaber ka'ari, la'amod baboker la'avodos boror. So again, my job in the morning is to resist the temptation to sleep, to get out of bed, right? Because sleep represents spiritual dormancy, right? I have to get up. I have things I have to accomplish. But how do I do that when often I'm so down on myself? How do you do it? She'ehu ma'orer hashachar. You have to awaken the dawn. And what does it mean to awaken the dawn? You have to bring the light. How do you bring the light? Be dan l'kaf sechos on yourself. How are you dan l'kaf sechos on yourself? Don't define yourself by your negativities, by your shortcomings, by your faults, but find something good inside of yourself. And remember again, once you find something good inside of yourself, you're ma'orer the shachar. You're bringing the light. I'm not defining myself by the darkness. I'm finding myself by the light that is within me. And if I believe that, if I find the light inside of me, that's what gets me out of bed in the morning. Because if I find my light, then I recognize that at the end of the day, I have the ability to accomplish something great. Now there's one more piece. Remember, the Ramah added something in. Right? What did the Ramah add in? Nathan Alachayim, something challenge. Okay. What did the Ramah add in? The Ramah added in Shivisi Hashem Lenegdi Samid. So what does that have to do with it? I mean, don't get me wrong, it's great. Right? I place God before me at all times, fantastic. But what is the Ramah adding on to the Mechaber? So we'll say, watch this. This is the last piece we'll get to do for this evening. The Rebbe says, V'zesh nismach la'alacha shel hashkamas haboker ha'ago shetzarech lekayim shivisi Hashem lenegdi samid. So the Ramah is coming and he's building on the Mechaber. So we'll say, sometimes when the Ramah comments, he's arguing on the Mechaber. And sometimes when the Ramah comments, he's building on the Mechaber. Rabbi Nachman, the Rebbe posits that here, the Ramah is not arguing. He's being Mosif. He's adding. And what is he adding? So here the Mechaber told me, first thing in the morning, I have to be Ma'ora Shachar. I have to bring the light through the whole way we described. The Rebbe said, so now the Ramah says, by the way, I want to tell you how you do it. Shivisi Hashem lenegdi samid. How does that work? Listen to this. Ki al yedei shemis orer mishenoso. Both side page Yud Zayin. In that middle section, Likutei Halachos HaMavur. Because it will say, when a person goes in and wakes up from his sleep, if I am Ma'ora the Shachar, like the Mechaber said, I bring the dawn. How do I bring the dawn? By finding the light that is inside of me. By being done myself, Lekaf Zichos, Al Yedei Zeh, Yochol Lekayim Shivisi Hashem Lenegdi Samid. So remember again, what did the Rebbe say before? When I go ahead and I find the good inside of me, what am I really finding? Or who am I really finding? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. See, Rebbe was saying, the great secret, says the Rebbe, is that when I find good inside of me, I'm finding the Ribono Shel Olam inside of me. That's what's really happening over here. The good, and that's what he quoted the Zohar. Yisrael, Kutshabrihu, Torah, Chadhi. When I find the good, I find the Ribono Shel Olam inside of me. Says the Ramah, something amazing. That's what it means. What is Shivisi Hashem Lenegdi Samid? Hashem is always in front of me. So the Ramah says, Mechaber, you're telling everyone you have to begin the day by bringing the light, by looking inside of yourself and finding the good, being dan lekaf sechus on your own. Says the Ramah, Mechaber, I'm going to add something else. When you find the good, who are you discovering inside of you? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shivisi Hashem lenegdi samid. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is always before me. Do you know why? Because every single person possesses good. And because every single person possesses good, that means that every single person possesses a chelek Eloka, a piece of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in themselves. So when I recognize that there's a piece of the Ribono Shel Olam inside of me, that's Shivisi Hashem Lenegdi Samid. The Rebbe goes on, he says, Hainu, shetamid ani mesim umashve es Hashem leneged einai, ki af al pi sha'ani rachok mimeno yisbarach. We'll say, listen to this line. Even though I am so far from him, afapikein Hashem lenegdi samid b'chol makom. I will say, do you hear these words? Look what Rabbi Nachman just said. Even though I'm so far from Hashem, Hashem is always opposite me. Ki ani motzi ba'atzmi nekuda tova shigilui elokus. We'll say, isn't this the great anomaly of our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu? There are times when I am so far from Him, but even when I'm so far, I couldn't be any closer. Why? Because if we accept the premise like Rabbi Nachman says, that ultimately each and every one of us possesses good. No matter how many Averos I've done, I possess good. I have to find the good inside of me. And that good is actually a manifestation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. that means that the Ribbon Shalom is not always just simply opposite me, but he's actually in me. So no matter how far I am, no matter how rachok I may be, I'm actually always right next to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You know what I'm saying? In Chassidus, there's a term or a phrase of ratzo v'shov. Right? Ratzo v'shov literally means forward and backwards. Forward and backwards. That life is this, it's Rabbi Nachman says it as he has a different lashon for it. It'll come to me in just a moment. Mimeni and maybe Elechem. Okay, it'll come to me in just a moment. In any event, the Rebbe says the great anomaly of our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu is that even in those moments when we are furthest, we couldn't be any closer. Because the good inside of me is a chilek elokah, it's a piece of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So no matter how far I think I am, Shivisi Hashem lenegdi samid. So both sides, when the Ramah comments over here and he says Shivisi Hashem lenegdi samid, he's actually being mosif on the mechaber. He's not arguing. He's reinforcing the mechaber's point. Mechaber, you're telling everyone the first thing they have to do in the morning is to be ma'or the shachar, to bring the light. You have to get up. You have to avoid the temptation to sleep, because sleep means all I see is the negativity inside of myself. You can't live like that. You have to find the good. You have to bring the light. And says the Ramah, when you bring the light and when you find the light, which everyone can find, because all of us possess light, that light is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That light is Shivisi Hashem Lenegdi Summit. And when I discover that in fact HaKadosh Baruch Hu is actually inside of me, even though I feel so far away, that gives me the chizik to get out of bed. That gives me the chizik to shake off the slumber. That gives me the chizik ultimately to move forward. So we'll stop over here for tonight, but it's a life-altering yesod, and it also helps to explain the opening phrase of Shulchan Aruch.
Coming back to what was said in the beginning about Dan Lekav's thoughts, even if a person would come to this realization of the good that he possesses, oftentimes he'll say to himself, he'll excuse himself for whatever reason for his actions, whatever he does that. How does that relate to being able to see the same thing in someone else?
What do you mean he'll excuse himself?
He'll say, I have a reason why I did this. I have a reason, whatever it is that he has. I think, my father, he screamed to me one time, and that's why I act the way I did. Whatever it was. But the other person, that guy, he has no excuse.
Yeah. So Rabbi Nachman presupposes that we're going to acquire for ourselves the midah of self-awareness. You see, the way the Rebbe operates is as follows: there is plenty of room for sinners, as long as you're honest. In other words, the moment that I begin making excuses for myself, this whole thing goes out the window, because this entire approach is predicated on brutal personalistic honesty. I know what I've done, and I'm not excusing it. I'm not excusing. I have no excuses for what I've done. I own it. But the danger in that then is that most people, the next step after they acknowledge and own it, is there's a total plunge of self-worth. Now I'm a nothing. So the Rebbe says, no, own it, don't make excuses for it, but just see that there's another side of the equation. There's also good. The good doesn't cancel out the bad, right? But the good gives you the basis. It gives you the foundation to rebuild yourself. If you don't see that good inside of you, there's nothing to work with. So if a person is still in a self-delusional state where I'm making excuses for myself, I don't know that I'm ready to learn Likutei Halachos yet. That's you hear what I'm saying? In other words, the whole thing is predicated on brutal honesty. But the beautiful part is, you see, most of us are afraid to be brutally honest with ourselves because we think that the effect of being brutally honest is then I must accept the reality that I'm a nothing. And the Rebbe says, no, fakir, just the opposite. That it's only with brutal honesty that I can actually begin to recognize that I'm an incredible something.
Mm-hmm. So you're basically, having worked on Capitol Hill for 20 years, you're writing off the narcissists.
I mean, I don't write off anyone, but I'm saying that a narcissist can't do this avoda.
Okay.
right? In other words, what Rabbi Nachman say in general. By the way, this is true in Chassidus, outside of Chassidus, in the realm of Tikkun Amidos. If a person wants to improve themselves, so step number one is I have to be honest, right? If I'm not, lahavdil, it's no different than someone. You see, I often say like this. The easiest way I think to relate to this is look at hate as an addiction. Right? So some people are addicted to alcohol, some people are addicted to pornography, some people are addicted to sin. Right? So if I look, again, what's the first step in the 12-step program? The first step. Hi, I'm Shmuel and I'm alcoholic. Right? That in other words, if I don't have honesty, there's nothing to do. So Einachinami, the narcissistic personality, unfortunately, can't be honest. If he can't be honest, Einam Aladaber. But assuming that a person can be honest, then we could move forward. But to me, the reason why Rabbi Nachman is my Rebbe, and the reason why this speaks to me so much is because so often we're so scared to be honest with ourselves because we think that the outcome of being honest it means I'm a nothing and I'm a failure. And the Rebbe says, no, my beautiful children, it's just the opposite. It's just the opposite. You're such a beautiful something. You're such a beautiful something. No matter how much you've messed up in life, but if you really want to find your something kite, you got to be honest.
At the order or the suggestion of Rabbi Breitowitz, I was told to read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. I don't know if you've read it.
Sure.
It seems to me that he's a chassid of the Rebbe.
I don't know. He's just. He was.
That you have to find your good, your meaning.
Yeah, I think
you could build on that.
Yeah, I think he had a little bit of a different. I think his yesod, which is absolutely unequivocal on this also, is you can't control what happens to you. You can only control how you respond. This is a little bit different. Because I can control if I sin or not. I control that, and it's very dangerous to say I don't control it. I absolutely control if I sin or not.
He said you can't control your circumstances.
Correct. He's talking about Auschwitz, right? We're talking about over here Lashon Hara, right? Arayas. I know because I think this is I control if I sin.
But Reb Nachman was dealing with a population that wasn't Auschwitz, but it was very hard.
100%. But I don't think the Rebbe here is talking about external circumstances. The Rebbe here is talking about how I live my daily life, my mitzvahs and my averos. So we're talking about an area of life where I have complete shlita. I have complete autonomy. Right? We'll discuss it when we continue Rabbi Nachman. We'll talk about situations where you don't have control over your circumstances. But here, I have absolute control of my circumstances, and I've messed up. And I own that I've messed up. And I don't have to be scared to own the fact that I've messed up, because owning that reality does not mean that I'm a zero. It doesn't mean that I'm a failure. It just means that I'm a human being who has a lot of negativity, but probably also has a lot of great good. And now my avoda becomes find my good and continue the process as it
Life has meaning. Life has purpose.
100%.
And that's a piece of
100%. All right, about say shkoyach. Is Myriv in the small basement in the base manager's side. This is more the other base manager's. Right.